Good evening, folks. This is Mike, Gray 1951, and I'm here to do an episode of Genre Files, which is a project that I was doing about a year or so ago, well, maybe not that long ago, with my friends DVD Collector 1974, James, and Forkerball, also known as Ian. And we took a little bit of a hiatus with this project, but now we're starting it up again. So James and Ian have already posted their videos, so here's mine. And I'd like to invite anybody else to play along who would be interested in doing this. The subject for this week is gangster films. So I have picked an enduring classic from the 1930s. This is The Petrified Forest. The Petrified Forest, released by Warner Brothers in 1936, starring Leslie Howard, Betty Davis, and Humphrey Bogart. Okay? Actually, Humphrey Bogart is billed fifth in the cast, but he is the breakout star of this film. Now, Bogart had been working in films since 1930, very small parts, trying very hard to establish a career and an image and getting lead roles, but he wasn't having a lot of luck. So he took a chance and did the Broadway play of The Petrified Forest in 1935, which also starred Leslie Howard. And one of the reasons why they decided to hire Bogart is because he looked like a real-life criminal named John Dillinger, who was very well known at the time, just a notorious criminal. He had been killed in 1934 by the FBI, and everybody knew what he looked like. He was always had his picture in the paper. He was in newsreel footage. So Bogart was hired to play this gangster named Duke Mantee, who was based on John Dillinger. And he studied newsreel footage of Dillinger, tried to get not only the appearance down, but the way the guy sounded, the way he moved, and did a really good job. It was a very successful play. So when the play was about to be made into a film by Warner Brothers, they got Leslie Howard to play his lead role, Alan Squire, and they decided they didn't want to use Bogart because he wasn't a box office name, and they already had Edward G. Robinson under contract. So Robinson didn't really want to do it because he was afraid that he was getting typecast in gangster roles, which was true. And Leslie Howard told Warner Brothers he would not do the film unless they used Bogart as well. So they did, and it was a good move because it was the beginning of Bogart's career as a star. After 1936, his name just kept rising and rising until by the early 1940s, he was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, legendary star. And the character of Duke Mantee really set the tone for the kind of roles he would play throughout his career, even not just gangster films, because he did a variety of things, but even some of the detectives he played, like Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon, and the character in Casablanca, who was they were good guys, but they had sort of a sinister, not quite so good edge to them, and he put a lot of nuance in those characters, and it all started with his portrayal of Duke Mantee in The Petrified Forest. Now, like I said, Betty Davis and Leslie Howard were the nominal stars of the film, both very good roles for them. The story, let me see if I can just give you the bare bones outline of the story here. It takes place in a diner in a place called Black Mesa, Arizona, which happens to be right on the edge of the Petrified Forest National Park, which means that they're isolated out in the desert. It's in the middle of nowhere, dust blowing everywhere. So Davis plays a young woman named Gabrielle Maple, whose father owns this diner, and she's stuck there in the middle of the desert, even though she would rather be somewhere else. Her mother was French, and she had lived in the United States with her husband, whom she met during the war, and their young daughter. But she, shortly after the daughter was born, she couldn't take her life in America anymore. She was miserable, so she went back to France and basically abandoned her daughter. So Gabrielle has grown up without her mother, even though they correspond back and forth. But she feels that she's in the wrong place. Her French blood is telling her that she needs to go to France and try her luck as an artist. She wants a different kind of life. So she's reading poetry, she's painting pictures, and she just wants to be something different, somewhere different. So into her life comes a drifter, Alan Squire, an English writer played by Leslie Howard, who was once successful and had actually lived in France with his wife for several years. But something happened, his life changed, and now he's broke, and he's not writing anymore, and he's drifting around the western part of the United States trying to find a reason to live. So even though he's a very intelligent and accomplished and erudite individual, he is very much down on his luck and very much a fatalist. But Gabrielle is drawn to him very quickly, and they form a friendship. So while all this is going on, Duke Mantee and his gang have committed some killings, and they're being chased by the police. And they end up at this diner where they plan to hold up for a while and wait for a rendezvous with some of their other gang, including Duke's girlfriend. And then they're all going to escape together. Well, the longer they stay in this place, the more the claustrophobia of the situation starts to get to everybody, and it gets very heated and very dramatic, especially the exchanges between Duke Mantee and Alan Squire. Alan Squire is telling Duke that the two of them have more in common than what Duke might think, because they're both kind of facing death, you know. So Alan Squire, as I said, is very much a fatalist. He comes up with this idea that he wants to sign over his life insurance policy, which he happens to have in his backpack that he's carrying through the desert, his very few possessions. He has his life insurance policy. He wants to sign it over to Gabrielle without her knowing it. And then once that's done, he asks Duke to kill him so that he will accomplish the ending of his life, because he feels he has nothing else to live for, and he will do something nice for this very beautiful young woman whom he would like to help have a better life if she had some money. So he asks the criminal to kill him, and Duke agrees. And that's all I'm going to tell you. This is very different than a lot of the standard Warner Brothers gangster films of the time, many of which were very, very good, but most of them were very fast-moving stories that weren't driven by dialogue so much as they were just action, and a lot of gunshots and a lot of killing, and a moral play, a morality play being shown in about 65 minutes, right? But this is a little bit different because it's much more driven by dialogue and characterization, because it had been a Broadway play beforehand. Very well done, very well acted by everybody concerned. And Bogart always thanked Leslie Howard for giving him the chance to play this role, and that's what jump-started his career as an actor. And they became very good friends. And years later, when Bogart and his wife Lauren Bacall had their second child, a daughter, they named her Leslie after Leslie Howard. And it's just a great film that I highly recommend to everybody. If you like films from that era, or if you've never seen films from that era, this might be a good place to start. Good acting by Bette Davis, who at this point in her career was having a lot of fights with Warner Brothers, with whom she was under contract, because she was trying to get better stories, better scripts, better characters. And every once in a while they would give her something like this, which she was very happy to do. But after this film, in 1936, she made two more films that same year, which were very low budget and not very well written or directed. And after that, she walked out of her contract and tried to sign for another film over in England, and just do something better and get away from Warner Brothers. Well, of course, they took her to court. So it was an interesting point in Bette Davis's career. She had already done a film called Dangerous in 1935, for which later on in 1936 she would win her first Academy Award for Best Actress. Now, she and Leslie Howard had worked together 2 years before in Of Human Bondage, and it was a big hit for Bette Davis. And then they would work together again in 1937 in a comedy called It's Love I'm After. So they had a lot of good chemistry with each other, and it's a joy to see them act together. So anyway, but no matter Davis and Howard, once Bogart comes on the screen, he takes center stage, and you can't take your eyes off him. The guy is just absolutely dynamic. So if you want to see the beginning of Bogart's career as a star, this will let you see it. All right, so anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching, and all comments are welcome.